Yo, what's up, guys? This is Pastor Jay. Welcome back to Jesus Talk Podcast Presents. This is my testimony. I'm your host today. I'm very excited to have you here. I'm back with one of my day one brothers, TR. What's good, bro? How you feeling today, man?
Hey, what's up, Jay, man? How's it going, my man?
It's going great, man. I'm excited to have you here. I know, man, we've been kicking it for years now, and we've been meaning to get to this. And I know God has laid something really special on your heart. And I want to jump into it. I appreciate you taking the time out for me, man. And I just want to take some time for people to get a chance to know you and share what God has put on your heart, bro.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and jump through some of the hoops real quick to kind of get this thing rolling. I want to start you off with one of very simple questions. One of my softball questions. I want you to tell us who you are, where you're from, and who is your pastor and church family.
Well, my name is C.R. Badger. I was born in Chicago, Illinois.
Chi
But
Town, what's good? Sorry.
yeah, Chi-Town, what's up? Majority of my childhood, I was also raised in Wisconsin. Um, I went to high school in Madison, and then also went to college in Milwaukee as well for my undergrad years. And then
Yeah.
following, after I completed undergrad, I got recruited to U of A in Tucson back in 2010. And I worked on my master's degree within focusing on architectural, urban design, and engineering. So it was kind of a multidisciplinary type of study, which God blessed me to have, and pursue that opportunity. And then after receiving my master's degree in 2013, I got recruited to work here in Phoenix. Phoenix been my home ever since.
You've been here officially how many years now?
So I've been up here since 2013 here in Phoenix, so about 9 years, so almost a
Yeah.
decade.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I came back from Texas probably in, I want to say, about 2014, February. So you had just been here just a hot minute before I actually met you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, I tell you, being here with you has been one of the best things that ever happened, man. I tell people all the time, you need to have the right people in your circle to build you up, bro. And I'm glad that you're here with me, man. My
Well,
second
tell the
question.
audience how we met in the first place.
Okay, so a couple of years back, I hadn't got invited to come and play a pickup game of basketball. And shout out to DJ as well. And we happened to be all meeting the same place playing basketball. Y'all, and there was this dude out here. He was a little taller than me, a little younger. But his hoop game was something vicious, y'all. And I'm like, who is this? Who is this dude? This is what a DJ homie, because DJ could hoop something fierce too. And DJ just kind of brought us together. It was like, yo, this is my boy TR. He's from Wisconsin or whatever. And we just hit it all ever since, man. And we've been hooping and just encouraging one another to push to great places in God. And he's been the same every time, y'all. Same every day. And it's hard to find good people who are really genuine, who are really about God's business and striving to walk in excellence. So I say ever since then, I realized then God was rebuilding my circle, to just put people in my life to keep me on the right track. And I'm glad that you're here. And DJ and others as well, man. It just shows you that when you link up to the right church with the right people, God will put what you need in place to build your parameters and make you better. So, he might have beat me in basketball a couple of times. We was in a little hoop league, and we had a couple problems. I may have been the problem, but we worked it out. I think we worked it out when I got off the team, but we worked it out. Things flowed, and now this dude, y'all, is up here winning championships out in Chandler. You know what I'm saying? Slim T. You know what I'm saying? Slim T, the reckless one,
Mm.
out here killing people, man. But
To add to
yeah, man,
that, Jay, man, it's funny of how certain bonds come from sports, because sports is a
exactly.
microcosm of real life, and majority of my close friends mainly come from sports and education.
Me
And
too.
that's how I'm able to develop that bond, as well as the church. I mean, as you alluded to, the brotherhood and the bonds that you create and develop is the church. And the one thing that I felt that really made our bond grow and cultivate was that we both love Jesus and we both love sports. And I have many other
Exactly.
friends that I can always have that connection with through the one thing is through sports, because we both like the same thing. I know me and you sometimes have our little battles of our teams that we like, which is all fun and stuff like that. Since he's an Indiana guy, and so we be kind of cracking jokes on each other whenever our teams play respectively. But yeah, man, I'm a big basketball fan, and basketball has definitely have helped me develop a lot of close relationships, as well as through other entities with church and education. So, big shout out to DJ Collins. He's
Yeah,
there and FPC.
Monica and family. Yeah, FPC the family. This dude gonna bring up sports. See, he's a LeBron guy, y'all. He's a LeBron guy. So I know some of y'all LeBron guys too. And so when my Pacers were playing against the Heat, and I can't remember what year it was, I was talking big smack, y'all. I was talking big smack. Paul George was Paul George, you know. He was out before he was PG-13. He was out there hooping and he was really giving it to him, just hanging with LeBron. Little did I know LeBron was playing with him. And this dude gonna call me talking about, Miami. I think he said Miami in 6. And I'm like, what? Pacers in 5. You know what I mean? That diehard Indiana guy in me that
Well,
died after
when
that
Indiana
season.
was up 1-0, I was like, watch. I knew Jalen's going to get on me. I'm like, okay, Jalen, what's going to matter is game 3. You'll
I was
have the first
I was
game.
blowing that line up, y'all.
And I knew he was going to like, okay. And I told us, like, dude, Indiana probably might win the first game because they're all hyped up and they've been ready
Yeah,
for the Heat all season. So they're probably
yeah.
going to have one game. So I'll give them that. I'm like, Jay, wait till game 3 and game 4. That's when the series starts.
Yo, that was a good squad, man. That was a good squad. And little did I know, T so smooth. T was so subtle with it. He was like, he. You know how some people, when you win, you have a tendency to hit them with that text or you calling them. T already do any of that. He waited like a whole 7 days or so, and he's happy to see me. How about that game, Jay? And I just, he just, I call it subtle destruction. Oh man, I just came in. He just chuckled and we won. It's all good, Jay. It's all
It's
good.
called killing with kindness.
That's it. That's it. Dude, I straight got murdered right in my shoes. Um, and that's the day I died as an Indiana fan. So God bless you, Indiana people. But yeah, man, it's all about family and sports has been really powerful for me too. Even back to some of my other great friends from high school, it all started from sports, the relationships I built through sports. So, I encourage my kids to make sure they get involved in things just to have a relationship because you never know what's going to transpire but through that. And also, academically putting you in positions to achieve later in life to college. So I tell people get in sports, get active, develop relationships, take what you can and move forward. And you actually did that. What sport were you actually playing that pushed you over to get that scholarship at U of A?
Well, with
Or was
U
it
of A,
more
it
was
was
it more
more academic.
academic or what?
It was more academic, but however, with as you just alluded to, with my love for sports and basketball, it opened up many relationships where I was able to integrate both academically and athletically. Now, at the time, when I was in college back in Milwaukee, I was just playing intramurals, but I got a chance to get exposed to all different types of sectors within, like, I used to practice with the basketball team at times and get a chance to develop good relationships with some of the players who I was friends with and whatnot, and seeing them play and kind of excel within their collegiate career and stuff like that. And even when I went to U of A, when I got recruited, it felt kind of like a sports recruitment because it showed me all the different championships that U of A has won, which I already knew because U of A
Yeah.
is known for a basketball school, and that's what attracted me there in the first place. But the fact that even though I was going there for graduate school, that they still showed me around as far as with their facilities because they knew that I was a basketball guy, and I think that was one of their tactics to attract me to
Hmm.
the school.
Absolutely.
And I got a chance to meet the late great Lute Olson, head coach.
Really?
Yeah, I was able to have a good conversation with him, and that was legendary. I have a picture of it somewhere in my album, but I can't find it. But I know that I have it somewhere. But rest in peace to late great Lou Olson, and I got a chance to also meet some other current players at the time back in 2010.
I think who would I still know would be on that roster from 210? There were some
That's a
hoopers.
long
I
time
know that
ago.
they were all. Yeah, they were always getting hoopers. I think Richard Jefferson had probably already been in the league for a couple of
Oh yeah, he
years.
was way before
Um,
my
I
time.
think he might have been in New Jersey hooping or something like that. But yeah, they definitely put some ballers out. Even now, like I know a lot of dudes are still trying to get down to U of A. They're just not going the other direction to the state schools, so they're going out of state. So yeah, they still got that pool, man. Like they're breeding something really strong down there. just picking up and taking over.
And
Um,
relationship really is a key integer in life that will take you to many different places in life. It's on not just what you know, but who you know,
that's it. That's what it always
and how
comes
you
back to.
maintain that as well.
That's
Because
what it
my
comes
time in
back to.
Tucson, when at the time I was at U of A, man, those were actually one of the best years of my life, as well as when I was going to college in Milwaukee, just college in general, because I was in college for, in totality, combining with undergrad, grad, 8 years. But those were the best 8 years of my life, and I was able to grow and get exposed to so many things because exposure leads to expansion.
Well, let me ask you one off the cuff. What's one thing that through your college experience that you would pass on to somebody else who's either on campus or considering going to school or is attending school and you want to say something that they need to hold on to keep them going forward in their college experience? What's one thing you would say to somebody?
You control your destiny. You determine your destiny. Um, College is beyond just trying to get an education, but it's also a place for you to mature, develop, and cultivate your mind as well as your body and your spirit as well as your intelligence as well. So college is more about finding yourself and how you want to present yourself and mold yourself in this thing called life. Um,
Right.
that's the one thing that I really take the most out of within my college experience is able to grow maturely as a young person and learning that the decisions I make have an impact, whether if it's positive
Absolutely.
or negative. I was always taught from a mentor and coach of mine that every decision you make is gonna have a subsequent impact. And the question is, are you going to be prepared for it? And when it comes, how are you going to handle it? Even if it's the best decision in your life or the worst decision in your life, be prepared for the subsequent effect and impact on how you handle it when it comes. Because there's always going to be a subsequent effect of whatever decision you make. Even if it's the simplest decision and you know what's going to happen, you still got to know how you're going to handle it when it comes.
And I think that's the one thing that I can say, at least for myself and probably a few others could struggle with, not necessarily having the best plan in case the plan doesn't go well. We don't know how to react or respond accordingly. And I think that comes with more strategy, more preparation on what you're going into and really thinking it through. I tell my son all the time, most people will say, son, don't play chess, play checkers. But I said, sometimes I feel like, son, you're young, but you're playing tic tac toe. And that's typical for a teenager, but I need you to start thinking on a chess level, thinking 3 to 4 steps ahead, grooming him in a way that as he goes on, he'll have more calculated steps to put himself in a better position. And I think a lot of times when people fail or things don't go according to plan, they don't know how to react. So most people will just give up and walk away, not realizing even someone mentioned to me yesterday about Thomas Edison. Many have said that the many times that he went through to get what he needed, though there's a whole nother story to that. But there's so much more in it that you just have to keep bouncing back and be resilient, excuse me, relentless or resilient in what you're doing and just move forward and take the time. I think some people in college it goes left and they have experiences in life and they just give up. And that was kind of my story. But I know I probably wasn't the only one. I think this is what you're saying is really powerful.
Oh, for sure, man. My ethos is that I had to adopt when I was younger is always be 5 steps ahead. I
Yeah,
would always think about, okay, this is what I plan to do. This is how I like the outcome to be. And if it does or does not come, how am I still going to navigate around it in order to still get on the other side? I always try to have the mentality is I never put myself in a room that I can't walk out of. I'm not going to walk into a room that I can't walk out of, or else I'm going to be stuck because usually most adverse situations mainly come is because you probably don't know what to do and don't have options to navigate yourself out of it,
facts.
wherever the case may be. And the one thing that I learned in my fraternity, Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated, was the PPPs, and it says that proper preparation prevents piss poor performance. So I always had that resonated and cultivate that within my walk and within my journey to always kind of see beyond the moment.
You got to, bro. I think that's where a lot of people get lost. They got their head out there. They're a deer in headlights and they're just not moving the right way. And That's one thing I can say, bro. I've watched you just work through things, year after year, constantly working on building yourself up and moving forward. And I told you before we got on camera, I said that's one thing now that things have settled down in my life that I realized I said, okay, I need to mirror that and move forward and take it and apply it and then wait for the results. I know it's not going to come overnight, but just be resilient and stick with it and watch what God does in the middle of it. Um, I got to ask you
A
another
coach
question,
always
bro.
told me that a wise person learns from other people's mistakes, but a fool learns from their own. And I've definitely had my
Right.
ups and downs and being in that foolish category where I'm looking in the mirror, I'm like, wow, that's the face of a fool. So it just helps me think and realize that with life experiences, it's like, okay, this is why this message was told to me. This is what God was saying through that individual, through that situation, and through that episode.
I think that it's powerful that you say that. That's why I believe as Christians, God wants us to use the word to mirror and see other people's life and what they've been through and learn to follow him. Take heed to his word and just be patient and faithful to what God has called us to. I feel like a lot of times as believers, some of us will get in situations where we don't see the hand of God moving fast enough, or we don't know if God will do it because we have doubt or we're discouraged and we start walking out. And I feel like that's why it's really important for us to rely on scripture, to let the Holy Spirit lead us and help us have a better understanding. But since we're here, I want to ask you, what's one of your go-to scriptures that you have utilized over the years when you've gotten yourself in what people would call a tough place or a rut?
Well, I actually have two scriptures. One of them is my life verse, which is Jeremiah 29:11, which states,
Yes.
I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope
Yes.
in the future. I'm the type of person where I love to plan. Basically, within my kind of surrounding environment, that's what I was kind of taught to always plan, especially with my studies within architecture, urban design, and engineering. You always got to have some type of plan in order to prosper, proceed, and progress. And then the second verse that's also been effective for me is Romans 12:2. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may
Come on
prove
now.
what is good and acceptable and perfect was the will of God. So everything we do and everything that we should do as a follower and believer and Christian and a lover of Christ is to always present and act accordingly and conduct ourselves as if Christ would do for us. We
That's
should love
right.
others. Christ loved the word, loved the world.
That's right. Boy, hey, don't be using my favorite scriptures. Did anybody tell you can use my scriptures, bro? Them is my scriptures. No, you,
Mhm.
you hit the nail on the head, bro. Knowing God has a purpose for me. Knowing that God is sovereign, and that I can rely on Him and trust in His word and have confidence in what He has the ability to do. I had a sermon just the other day talking about, in a few words, what God was able to do when He spoke over someone and spoke over something. Creation. He established this world, and He gave us purpose. He gave us salvation. He has the power to heal. So I know that God has a plan for all of us if we just yield to Him, if we give Him a chance, even taking baby steps. I can trust in what God can do. And even in Romans, like, it just reminds me too to just trust the process, believe in Him, and everything is going to work out. But I know that you've been walking with God for several years now. Is there something that you feel that every Christian that you've experienced should know and be prepared for, to help their walk in God grow close? What's something you would say to somebody, who may be new to the Lord or maybe walking with God, that you've learned that they need to take hold to as a believer?
For a new baby Christian, no matter, I guess I'm speaking in the context within at least 21 or above, as young adults to adults.
Hmm.
Um, we're basically defined, for the most part, on our environmental background, who we're surrounded by, and how we grew up, which ultimately develops our makeup and how we're wired based upon our life experiences. And so, with that being said, if you want to make a pivot and you want to have Christ come into your life, the one thing I would definitely recommend is don't wear your emotions on your sleeve, because
Facts.
the enemy, once you become a baby Christian or accept God into your heart and into your life and want to make that pivot, to live like God, you're going to have a lot of temptations that come upon you, basically from your past, maybe that could affect your present. But as I was saying earlier, man, you navigate your road. And
That's
so
right.
definitely don't wear your emotions, your personality, your accolades, attention, reputation on your sleeve. Don't hide from it, but don't rub it in people's faces or showcase it off your sleeve. Just let it gradually be you, and let God work within you, and let the signs surrounding you speak for itself to help you navigate and stay on a good path. Because no matter if you are just a new believer or if you're a pastor or a bishop, we're all people still at the end of the day. And God has a plan for each and every one of us, despite our positions, despite our accolades, despite our reputation, despite our popularity. The element that we all have in common is that we're still people, and God has His dynamic relationship amongst each and every one of us in a very unique way.
That's right. That's right. And he loves enough to spend time with each of us and have that intimate time that no one has to go without. I know some people have looked at God, and I've heard people actually say this, that God is too busy to have time for somebody like me. No, God has time for all of us. He has time for everything that He's created. And He longs to spend time with us and build us up and let us know who we are and show us where our life should be, where He wants to take us.
Don't they
Um,
say that He may not come when you want Him, but He's always on time? Whenever
that's
God
right.
comes on time, that means it's the right time.
That's right. All right. I got another one for you.
Hmm.
Since you've said that, when did God become real to you? You know, I know that you told me before that you grew up in a church home. When did your relationship with God begin to grow where you said, I'm not just loving God because of my parents? I actually, God has had a moment like a burning bush type moment with Moses in my life. What was that experience like for you?
The time for me when I realized God was real was I was actually living on my own. To give a further background of myself, like you said, I grew up in a Christian home. Both my parents were ministers. My dad was a pastor at New Beginnings Alliance Church in Madison, Wisconsin. So I was raised in the church. And but however, you're kind of categorized in a different space, is
Hmm.
because you have a certain unspoken level of expectations based upon the public or the average Joe, quote unquote, is looking at
Right.
you because of what you're associated with and who your parents are. So therefore, it gives an underlying expectation, which I kind of knew at a younger age. So I kind of was just on the down low and just doing serving, because the one thing that what was my favorite thing to do in the church was to serve. Whether if I did sound ministry, doing mic checks, or doing music, as far as being a part of the choir in the band, doing drums. Um, when I moved to Tucson, this is definitely God right here. My dad asked me, "What is your biggest fear?" And he asked me that multiple times. I'm like, "What's my biggest fear?" And the answer that first came up to my biggest fear is losing my relationship with God if I'm on my own.
That's huge.
Because now, since like you were just saying that we're used to kind of, and especially in nuclear Christian households, where you somewhat have this expectation, not just from your parents, but from people outside the home and the public, to carry yourself and present yourself a certain way. But now that since I'm on my own, now I got to see what works for me and how am I able to not just live up, but develop my own path. And so
Right.
it was a blessing in disguise when I first moved to Tucson and started my collegiate career at U of A. Was there was another church that is dear and home to me to this day called Salome Christian Church, and they're actually affiliated with our denomination, which is Christian Missionary Alliance, which is a similar church to what my father's was back in Wisconsin. And so I always felt like God had a plan the entire time, referring back to Jeremiah 29:11, because that was my home church in Tucson while I was at U of A. And I think because of that, it really helped me keep me balanced, sane, and disciplined alongside with school, because I knew at the end of the day, that's what I was here for. But it was definitely like a refuge for me to still kind of understand that, God's in control. And so Salome was definitely my church home and still is to this day. And my relationship with my pastor, who's also another father figure to me, really kind of elevate me to a different level as a man and as a young man too at the time. And so, to make a long story short, the church wasn't too far from U of A. It was literally a mile away, where I would just park at the church and go to walk to campus almost every day.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, and for sure. And they also had a basketball court, is outdoor basketball court, where if I needed to take a break from school and kind of a lot of the hard work and stuff, I could just go to the church and just kind of just do a little bit of some hooping sessions over on their court. So everything just kind of came together, and God really put all the pieces together. And so that was when I knew God was real, because I went through some certain adversities while I was in school. Not to say that I put myself there, but it was a test. God
Yeah,
was testing me, and He was seeing how I was going to react and respond. Because how a person reacts and responds will tell you who they really are, whether
right.
it's emotionally, passive aggressively, silently, all the above. There's always a reaction and response. And so, how I knew God was real was that I was in kind of a situation where, you know, my collegiate career was kind of on the line, and I had to do something about it. My parents always advocated for me for education. I lived in education and grew up in education, as well as athletics and ministry. But in this certain situation, I had to advocate for myself, because I'm the only one out here that
Right.
is able to try to make some type of answer come from a adverse situation. And so, through prayer and through talking with the right people, and talking with my recruiters that supported me out here, and really, technically, the school, U of A, really had my back. And I'm very appreciative this day. And that's when I knew, like, okay, God had my back. And that's when I knew God is real. So I prayed about it, did whatever I could to work through to, get me on the right track. And Lord and behold, I was still able to continue and, learn from it and be better from it, to be sure I don't end up in those predicaments again in the future moving forward. But I'm actually looking back in hindsight, I was appreciative of that situation, because it taught me resilience and perseverance.
That's right.
And by me coming to God, and then Him showing me the signs on how to handle the situation that I was in to get myself out of it, um, it all really worked out. And they also saw that, okay, this dude's serious. Like, he really wants to uh, set himself in a good position to succeed. Because in order to succeed, you got to be put in the right position to succeed.
That's
And
right.
so when I knew God was real, is technically when I'm living on my own. I can't call my parents, say, Mom and Dad, help me, blah, blah, blah. Not that I wanted to, but this was a test. It's like, okay, how a real man are you? And how are you going to handle adversity and controversy as a man the right way?
Wow, that's a couple of things there. I agree with you. There were moments in my life where I probably would have tried to figure it out on my own and sought the Lord. And then there were other moments where I probably would have just said, Dad, what do you think I should do? And I know some people, or Mom, what should I do? Some people are willing to step out and say, Hey, I need help, or what do you think I should do? But I think it's very important that you take a moment to stop and seek the Lord and say, Lord, what do you feel is best? I know typically I would always go to my family for direction and navigation. But in this case, because I'm trying to build my relationship with you, what do you think? And when we go to God, sometimes He doesn't move fast enough. He'll let things play out. He'll give us direction, or He'll give us encouragement, and then He'll let things play out. And then we just have to keep going, having confidence in what He said, and just allowing Him to move it into fruition, that we could see it manifested and really give us purpose and direction. I've had some Red Sea type moments in my life too, where I was like, Lord, where are you? And He just said, stand on what I said, and He would move. So that's powerful. I want to also give a shout out to your pastor down in Tucson as well. It makes me think, as a young pastor, how we have to really understand um, the mindset of God and what His purpose in and being a pastor looks like. Some
Mm-hmm.
people think that being a pastor or having a flock looks like something big and something glamorous, and we have to have the cameras. And I'm not throwing shade on anybody. We have to have the lights and the fog machines, and we have to have all these what I would call gimmicks to lure people in or help them to really enhance the experience. But what God is really looking for is, I told somebody last night at a bachelor party, a Christian bachelor party, God is just looking for your yes. And as pastors and people in the church, we need to be willing to let our light shine and have an impact on the people who are around us. Whoever God sends our way, we may have a small flock, and that's okay. It all works for the good, it's all for a purpose. And by that church being there and being an affiliate of your father's church back in Wisconsin, God put you there around the right people who are going to nurture and help you grow and give you encouragement when you need it. And that's what the church is about, helping people develop a stronger relationship with God to get where they need to go, even if it's just for a season. And I feel
Hmm.
like some churches, they're so focused on numbers and trying to look like this church or trying to be like that church, or, well, we don't have a great praise team, or we don't have a drummer, we don't have this. They miss the purpose of what God put them there to be, a beacon to show people this is the way, this is the standard. And being by campus, churches by campuses, I think those are powerful churches because you have a chance to have an impact on somebody who's going to go down the road to be something great. So, shout out to the pastors and people out there, even the old mothers out there, kind of being, what I call campus mom or church moms for those who don't have family nearby, man. We got
Oh,
to really tap
absolutely.
into that. It's really powerful.
Oh, absolutely, man. My pastor and his wife are my spiritual parents. Like,
Hmm.
ever since I've been down here, man, like, I really felt like I had extended family the entire time. As I was saying
Yeah,
earlier, that both of the churches are affiliated with the same denomination, the Christian Missionary Alliance. And I started telling my dad, it's like, man, this is like you be getting blessed. It really felt like home because the similar setting, the similar environment, and the similar just outcome, it just felt like an extended version of home. And that's why, I've really have embraced and just said, dude, that this is definitely home. And my pastor always told me this one saying that life is not just about actions, but life is about 75% of reactions. And he always often asked me, how do I react when adversity approaches me? And
that's
from that
good.
story that I was talking about, that hit kind of the nail on the coffin, partially as far as how do I react and respond. And so life will definitely be determined of how you act and react when things don't go as planned. That's why I always go back to the PPPs and tell myself, man, think 5 steps ahead. Always be 5 steps ahead of whatever you plan to do or whatever comes upon you, so you know how to react and respond appropriately. And that you'll find that by doing that, you'll be able to develop the compassion for other people, because then you'll be able to see how others walk and move around as well by you, trying to attempt to be steps ahead so you can navigate as appropriately as possible. And you don't have to unravel when adversity hits.
Right. Right. Well, we're actually there. I was going to jump in and ask you, lastly, as I give you the floor, what did you want to share? You're already tapping into it. I want you to go ahead and just kind of take off and continue on. Share what God has put on your heart that you'd like to share with the viewers.
Well, I definitely wanted to discuss with you, Jay, as me and you have kind of, talked a little bit in brief about our brotherhood and bond, is turning our pain into passion, positivity, and purpose. Because we all go through pain. We all go through bad situations, life situations, adverse situations, and controversy. But there's always some type of ending where it could be positive. Even if the situation comes across and lands negatively, you can always make some positivity come about it based on how you look at it, number one, how you act on it, number two, and number three, who you can relate to. Because we all can relate to somebody.
Yeah, we can. I know there's some people that I feel I connect to because of their story, because of what they've been through, the similarities. And you know what? There are definitely some moments in my life, G, where I didn't have the right response. I didn't have the right reaction. And growing up in my house, I seen people when crisis came, how there were moments, which is typical for people, to just unravel. And I said to myself, when the time comes and I'm presented in this situation, I not only want to have multiple ways to get out of it, but I want to make sure that I learn to operate and have composure, make sure I don't freak out. Because
Mm,
I find a lot of times when people panic, they lose sight of what the plan is, and then they go left, and then it typically doesn't work out. So for me, it's all about composure. Now, my heart was broken when LeBron hit that shot with a couple of seconds left. I wasn't prepared for that situation. Shout out to LeBron, the Pacers killer. And but in life, in actual real moments, I feel composure and preparation is everything,
Oh yeah, for
everything,
sure.
and it's helped me. It's
How you
helped me a
remain
long way.
composed and poised will definitely matriculate in the future of how you react and respond to other situations. Go ahead.
That's
Sorry to
right.
interrupt.
No, you're good. No, you're right. That's it. I think being poised is everything. I tell my kids all the time, never let the moment be so big that you're not able to handle it. Have a plan for that moment and execute. And my kids play basketball. My older two play basketball, and would typically say that in a basketball game, even this is one phrase I just say right off the bat: no game is ever won in the first quarter. No
Mhm.
game is ever won in the first quarter. It's going to have its ups and downs. You're going to have your moments where you feel things are going great, and you're riding the wave, and you're going to have some moments where you feel like you crash and burn. But I need you to recognize what's going on around you. I need you to take a step back in the timeout and understand everybody around you is not going to have the same confidence that you have in knowing that no game is won in the first quarter. But I need you to see this through. I need you to start making adjustments so you can pick up on that and motivate those around you. Some are going to listen, some aren't. But I need you to keep moving forward and do everything you can to change the outlook on this game, and then find a way to try to adjust to the person you're guarding, what the team is doing, and try to make some kind of changes. So I'm hoping that some of that trickles over. He's only 15 and she's only 12, but I'm hoping it trickles over to their adult life, because there will be adversity. There will be moments when you feel like you're down and you're in the corner, and they're up by 21 and it's the fourth quarter, and but you could have your Tom Brady type moment. So I'm hoping that in life I can show them that we can stand in adversity, and at some point they catch on and they're willing to do it, not because I said so, but because they know it works. So I believe in the PPP, and it's has really put me in a better place. And now I'm trying to take the time to make that effective in other areas of my life. When I saw it worked here and I saw it worked here, I said I need to use it for the other portions of my life to really have what God desires for me.
Mm, definitely for sure, man. Um, I was also just thinking about, with the pain that you can turn into passion, positivity, and purposes with COVID. Throughout the last couple of years, we've experienced a major paradigm shift throughout the world with this pandemic. It forced us to approach things a certain way, live things a certain way, be
Yeah,
uncomfortable a certain way, be angry, and it just really brought up a lot of different reaction and responses, not just within our local home, but within national and international, as far as how people react and respond, and especially within America, because everybody knows that America is arguably one of the best places to live in the world with freedom. But
right.
however, there's a caveat to that. Often have learned that sometimes freedom comes with consequences,
Sure
and that
does.
freedom comes with choices that one doesn't think about the consequences. Sometimes your freedom can sometimes be your own worst enemy is because you have options. The question is, how do you utilize that options with magnifies of how you make your choice. Freedom can be a gift and a curse. And so, as we saw within COVID, or how people reacted and responded and tried to adapt and adjust, we saw a whole bunch of different levels of adversity, within the political realm, within the social realm, within our family realm, within our media realm, entertainment realm. The list goes on and on. In sports,
Right.
we saw how all that became adopted reluctantly. Because this was all
Right.
reluctant because when the fear element comes into play, we're all going to get real tense, we're going to get real nervous, and then our emotions and reaction will manifest even more to where, as I was saying earlier, how a person reacts and responds will tell you who you really are. And we saw plenty of examples of that um, within our social political realm and just within our social environment as a whole.
One thing about COVID that really like kind of took my breath away is just watching, as you said, how the world basically came to a standstill. And seeing no sports, and then not having a crowd, and not having a plan, and seeing how so much information was out there that it led some people to run out and buy up all the toilet paper, for instance, because for some reason we thought that that was going to help, or in some way that was going to have an impact on things. But it's important that we understand we need to have the right information, and have the strategy and the plan and carry it out. I saw how the business world stopped, the stock market, you know, dipped to a really low place. I saw people dealing with emotional stress. I hear about physical abuse and relationships, children being in places where now they're at home with their abuser, and at least they had a chance to get away because they had school or they had these outings. And I saw just the stress level of a lot of people start dipping to a really low place. People started talking about things like COVID weight and things like that. But I
Mm,
also saw some opportunities in what I would consider what I consider to be as a famine. I saw some opportunities for people to take advantage of, to switch from one type of business to another. I saw the entrepreneur side pick up. I saw a lot more blogging and vlogging. I saw a lot more podcasts jumping up. I saw a lot more people taking businesses and making it online versus storefront businesses. And I just learned that this was the one real moment in my life at 41 where I saw the world stop. And I'm sure it won't be the last time. And I saw certain inventions and certain things pick up, because people were able to adapt to technology that we utilize now that we wouldn't have prior to COVID. So I saw how it helped and how it hurt. And some of the ramifications are still being played out. But I think it just goes back to the original point that we have to keep in mind, what are we going to do in case things go left? And some people didn't know how to adapt. Some people started experiencing what they call cabin fever, and I believe in that. When the room starts closing in, you just been inside a little too long. But I think that even in the worst moments in life, if we don't know the Lord and we reach out to Him, and say, Lord, what's the best way to handle this? He'll help you overcome every adversity in life. And I see people thriving now, in the real estate market. Some people were saying that, we would never get back to that place. And look now, the market's still thriving. It's not quite as strong as it used to be, but it's thriving. And I see, more things taking off as a result of it. I
mm.
had a business prior to this that I was trying to engage in, having a sports recreational league. Right when COVID was coming out, I was building it up. And I remember thinking, Lord, this is the worst time for it. But I've learned so much on how to make it better. If I would have prepared even more, it could still be effective. So I think it just goes back to the PPP and how COVID really showed me, that there's still more than one way to skin a cat. You just got to have the
Oh,
right mindset.
absolutely. To your point, as far as with COVID, I often was telling like, man, one may feel the residual effects negatively, but somebody's going to prosper positively. And the tech world
Absolutely.
prospered and elevated quickly. Like that person,
Tremendously.
like the owner that created Zoom, he set for
Yep.
life because Zoom came in at the right time
Yep.
as far as
Hey,
the
bro, I remember
gentrification
hearing people
of
saying
business.
Zoom, Zoom. I'm like, this is Zoom. And people were doing all these meetings online. I'm like, what is all this? And man, it just blew up, man. It took off. And I was like, this guy or this group, they knew. They knew. And then I saw other businesses taking off, and I was like, man, there's life in the wilderness. There's life in the valley, bro.
Oh, definitely, man. You know, the most geniuses and famous people are often ahead of their times. They see things before the problems occur, and they already have a solution to it before it happens. Think about with Steve Jobs and Microsoft, with the iPhones, and now with the
Right.
smartphones. That inventor that created that was ahead of its time before we knew we ever needed it. Now we can't live without it.
Right.
It's just such a just a generational transcended element that has impacted the entire world. And even with podcasts, like you're alluding to, now the podcast industry has totally just illuminated and is now a part of today's world. So whenever adversity or problems occur, there will always be some type of solution that will thrive and create a whole new avenue and a way of how we look at life. And so, with that being said, to the point of how we react and respond to COVID, when emotions go high, logic goes low. And we saw a lot of examples of how logic was usurped by emotions.
Yeah, yeah, a lot more than I thought. I mean, just
Especially
anyway,
with the
I don't want to.
vaccine and how
Yeah,
people reacted and responded with the vaccine. And some of it I understand from a health standpoint, but let's be honest, the majority of it was just emotional and somewhat just, I won't say ignorant, but just out of pride, to use like a better term.
yeah. I mean, but on that, I can get where some stuff was just asinine, but I can get where some people were coming from on why they didn't want to or why they felt this wasn't the best move. But the thing that I didn't like that came as a result of that is that it made some people start turning on each other. It became this whole fallout of will you or won't you? And I felt like that was never what this should have been about. It almost became a thing like, you know, we take pride in our voting system. And when people don't vote, we say, well, you don't have a right to say anything. And people will jump on you for that. And it became a whole thing that if you didn't get the vaccine, you were like the scum of the earth. And if you got the vaccine, you were the biggest fool in the world. And I felt like it got a little too on the mainstream that it should have still been a personal choice. I get how it can have an impact on you if you don't, and I understand how it can have an impact on you if you do. But I felt like we started picking sides, and it should have never been about that. So there was a lot going on, bro. Even now, some of it still exists, but
The one
I think
thing
we just got to
about
keep moving
COVID that
forward
was
at
the
this point.
biggest test for us as a whole worldwide, and I believe that Jesus was sending this message to us for COVID, it was a test of how we exercise humility and exercise
Right,
selflessness. It was clear
right.
that certain people reacted and responded, even with the vaccine, and how that was transpired. You saw a lot of true colors, and I often say adversity and
Hmm.
controversy exposes true colors and true character, and that's what we were seeing throughout, majority of our surrounding environment. Even, there was some even around my work environment where I would kind of hear just on the side, even though I wasn't in the conversation, but just, hearing from a distance on how they feel and how they react and respond, and a lot of their response was out of selfishness. And the one thing that why, at least for me personally, why I took the vaccine is because I'm not worried about myself as far as my health, but I'm worried about those that may have underlying conditions, and I don't want to be the reason to have that effect be worse or make them be susceptible to a certain toxin that I did not mean or intend to give off like that. So that was one of the reasons why, me personally, why I took the vaccine, because I'm thinking about my surrounding environment. I don't want to contribute or be a reason why a person who I know that has serious conditions and I'm contributing to the problem, because I want to make sure that they are healthy and safe as best as possible. And if that involves me doing something that's out of my norm or something I wouldn't do, I'm taking myself out of the equation and thinking
Right,
about those around me, because not one shoe fits all. And
right.
so I always, went into the perspective, at least from a health perspective, because I think we as a people really make things problematic when we try to conflate and merge the politics and health. Now it's inevitable. I mean, I totally understand. I'm not ignorant to that. It's inevitable sometimes when certain decisions made when it comes with health and politics, but sometimes it really can cause more divisiveness when those two merge.
And I can also understand how some people decided, and I was one of these people. I went through different stages throughout the 2.5 years, and I'm sure I wasn't the only one. I'm wearing a mask. I'm not wearing a mask. But really, what hit home was when I spoke to someone who said that they actually had a family event, and they were all just getting together. Some were masked up, some weren't, and someone actually lost their life. And that's when it really hit me that this is a lot more serious than what I realized. And I thought things had gotten quote unquote better now and back to normal. And just because the restrictions had loosened, we still should be practicing, social distancing and whatnot, and wearing a mask and whatnot. Because there were times when I wasn't even thinking about it, but I was one of these people. This is just me, where I said, if this is going to be the way the Lord takes me out, then so be it. And someone said, well, you need to start thinking about your family. Start thinking
Mhm.
about not just yourself, but as you said, how it affects others. So I started taking better steps at times to be more cognizant of that. Um, but here we are now, and it's funny when I go back to the lockdown when we couldn't travel, especially here in Arizona, and seeing where we are now. I'm like, yeah, what happened to all that? Like, are we good now? Like, we don't have to do it. I know it's still out here running loose. I know it has various variations. I know that's probably redundant, but I think even now, that really just reshaped our life, and I hope in life we're more prepared for things as they come in the future. And lastly, I'll say this: I also look back at the feeding frenzy again, how I saw people and just experiences that they had and not being prepared for this. I saw people getting food boxes who would have never been in line for a food box. I saw people ashamed and embarrassed, but they needed the food because their income wasn't where it needed to be. Our pastor, Severed Convention David Eddings, always talked about start off with an emergency fund and at least letting it be at least 90 days and building on it thereafter. People were so high on the horse that they were humbled and didn't know how to handle it. They were losing things left and right. So the famine actually brought their pride down, humility, to a place they had never been before. Now they're probably back and aren't even thinking about it anymore. But it just goes back again to the preparation and really thinking things down the road. Not just 5 to 10 years, and being prepared has really motivated me because while everyone else or many people were going through, things didn't change much for me because I had a system. I had a system that God gave me, and I just kept operating in it. And He actually told me, which I found to be very funny but true. He said, "You're going to flourish in famine," and
Mm.
I was like, "What?" And He asked me to flourish, and I was able to tap into other things that I probably wouldn't have had access to if He hadn't positioned me there. So I think it's important wherever God puts us that we take heed to His word and know that it says that a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, that we need to be prepared. It says that an ant prepares for winter and summer, and it has no master, it has no one over them. But even this little small thing that can lift 10 times its weight, understands preparation, it understands wisdom. And if an ant can prepare for winter and summer, it's preparing for something in advance that's a long way away. And it has the ability to acquire and recognize what season it's in and take advantage of it. And I think as believers, we need to learn to do that effectively too.
Absolutely. I mean, I can speak within a Christian context, and maybe you
Oh,
can either allude to this or correct me if I'm wrong. But especially how COVID affected the church was the mandate versus the spiritual beliefs. It's like, okay, I understand physically and the worldly what the mandate says and what we should abide by, but I still don't want that to usurp what the word says. And I know that also presented some conflicts as well because certain churches had to close down because of that's one of the easiest ways to generate COVID because you have a high populated group of people all in one room. And you heard, probably in previous news a while ago when the COVID first erupted and spread it rapidly, was that churches were still, wanting to have church and have the congregations collectively in the room against the mandate because they felt like, okay, well, you're hindering our spiritual dynamic in time. But
yeah.
with that being said, what the pandemic showed us, to all of us, that it was a clear gap of exposure where you see the gap between brown and black people and poor individuals from poor environments where they didn't have the access to have that medical accessibility and
Hmm.
medical recovery. Because let's be honest, to your point, as far as how you were at least preparing yourself or trying to be sure that through the internal period of COVID that you at least had some type of system to keep you safe within the time being while it was transpiring. And so did I. Through the grace of God, the pandemic only affected my household, pretty slightly because we kind of had a system in play that would protect us and propel through. But not everybody has that. Everybody comes from different households. Everybody comes from
Right.
different classes. Everybody's situation is different. Not one shoe fits all. But definitely for those that come from the lower class, people that lived in poverty, and those that come from underserved and marginalized communities, they were the ones getting affected the most because a lot of them were entering hospitals, as we were talking about, with pre-existing and chronic conditions where they weren't able to be managed and taken care of properly. And so those were the ones that needed to be focused on as far as from a health standpoint to be sure they were getting the same amount of health care just as much as those that are eligible and have the accessibility to receive the health care are able to receive as well. So that was definitely a different dichotomy that we saw within the classes of people. And so it really just showed, um, as far as the pandemic, of different class, different treatments, and how, even from a racial standpoint, how those dynamics differ
You
are
know, and that's
different.
the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it. Having, and shout out to your wife as well, having a wife working in the medical field. I want to take a moment to just appreciate for what they've done and the rest of the nursing staff and the doctors and everybody in between, and kind of the hardship and the hit that some of them are still dealing with now. I hear conversations about large numbers of people walking off because they experience so much stress and trauma by being dedicated. And after hearing that they were going to get stipends and getting the stipends, now some are hearing that their jobs may be on the line. The trauma that COVID caused was tremendous, and I heard a lot of people were even having to reach out to counseling and therapy services sessions
Mhm.
because they just weren't able to cope with the magnitude of the anxiety and the pressure that COVID created. And even now, some people are still trying to deal with it, and I think this is why people need the Lord. And you know what? I also want to say, frankly, that for brown and black people, that there's nothing wrong with getting therapy. I know that there's some kind of belief out here that that's not something we need, and we're just built different than that. But we all have moments where we need to reach out to somebody else, and I think that we shouldn't be afraid of it. I think we should embrace it. I strongly recommend a Christian counselor, but if that's not available, I think that we should be reaching out to somebody who can encourage us. And not only that, as believers, praying and reading our word and having strong elders in a circle around us. But the trauma was tremendous. Did you hear of anybody, or did you experience anything that related to emotional trauma with people in your circle because of COVID or as a result of COVID now?
Well, I agree with you, man. I really think that within our community, as far as black and brown people, we have this negative misconception of therapy and emotional healing. And I really think we do need to get away from that, is because if we don't talk about it and express it, even if it's in an unorthodox way, how are we going to heal? Sometimes by healing, we have to engage our hurt and release our hurt and give it to God to put it back into a godly context.
Come on now.
Because COVID definitely, to your point, it hit a lot of people in underserved, undermanaged, and marginalized black and brown communities. The worst is because of lack of accessibility and lack of knowledge. Because if you don't have the knowledge, you wouldn't know of how to address certain adverse situations. And so that's what separates certain classes, is because of the knowledge and accessibility and economical. Those are the three components that I learned, at least with COVID, that was very transparent as far as how one affects another differently. And to that point, man, as far as with seeing therapy and trying to understand your psyche, I think it's very important for us to really talk about it, because I know a lot of it we're not proud of, and there's some little bit of some insecurity, some internal shameness, but that's okay,
Hmm.
man. Nobody's perfect. We all have had our pits and falls and our downfalls as well. The question is how do we get back up from it? A coach always told me that the only time I look down as a person when I'm helping them up.
Good.
And with that being said, we can always help one another, even if we can't relate to one another. often had this ethos within my environment, within my upbringing. Even if a person that I may run into is completely different from me from the outside, there's always one certain similarity that we have in common. It's just finding that common core, and that will open up floodgates. My time at U of A, um, within my class and cohorts, of course, I'm one of the few African Americans and people of color within my cohort, which is predominantly Caucasian, which I'm used to. That is totally fine. How I exercised that, and I was able to still develop good relationships and dynamics with my cohort and peers, is finding one common element that we can relate to and share. And from there, it opens up the floodgates. It just kind of demolishes kind of that security chain that we put amongst ourselves out of protection, and we're able to grow and open up with one another. I often said, if you find one thing in common, even with a racist, to be honest with you, I often apply this in my life, that we're still people at the end of the day. And
That's
if I'm
right.
able to interact with a person that may look at me differently on my outside, but then try to find a way where we can get to know each other on the inside, their perspective will change. It's happened to me, and I've been able to hopefully bless that with other people by just finding the one common element, even if you feel like, man, from the outside, this dude would never be my friend. I would never associate with him. But then that one common element in one conversation, it just opens up the whole narrative and changes the narrative and changes your perspective, how you view that person, how they see life, and understand, like, okay, we have some similarities in the walk of life. It's finding the one common element that will open up floodgates.
And see, for me, that's one thing that my mom always stressed to us, especially growing up in the church. It was important to develop relationships. We even have a rule now, and my sister reminded me that I have been saying it wrong all these years. I thought the rule was at church, when church is over, you go fellowship with at least five people to check on them, see how they're doing, especially if they're a visitor or something like that. It's actually 10. But over the years, I've just learned that it's important to develop relationships. I've learned that it's important not to burn bridges. You never know who you're going to run into and the impact they may have on your life or vice versa. And though you may feel you may have an advantage over somebody, that you really don't, because you never know where you're going to be tomorrow. So it's important that you learn to engage with people, network, talk to people, fellowship, develop relationships. Find, as you said, some common ground, because we're all supposed to be children of the Lord, and we can all learn from each other. And that's what's important. I never grew up in a home where we were raised to think we were better than somebody else. But it was to find a way to connect, have fun, use humor, introduce the Lord to people, and just be a blessing and be transparent. Maybe not sharing everything in your life, but just being, a general good person. And that has been blessed me in so many ways. And I want to commend you for that. I know you're not perfect. I know you don't walk on clouds. I'm sure your wife would say that. Shout out to her
I'm
again.
far from it,
But you've been a
man.
solid dude the whole
I'm not
time I've
perfect.
known you. You know,
Mhm.
yeah, nobody is. But you've been a solid dude the whole time I've known you. And we need more people out here who are willing to be a blessing, and just encourage people and be there for them. I know there was one time I was in a dark place, mentally, and you were like, "This dude ain't answering my phone call, y'all. I've called this dude about 6 times. I'm going. This is just recently. I'm going to go to his house." And sure
Mhm.
enough, I looked through the peephole in his TR, and I'm like, "Dude, come in here." And he's like, "Man, I'm just calling to check on you. What's going on?" And no, unbeknownst to him, I was really going through. And I think it's important that we check on people, and take a step back from our life and just find a way to have an impact on somebody else's life by being what we call in church intercessors. So, shout out to you again. But I think we could build a brotherhood. We could build people up by just a few encouraging words and giving people some time. I think that's really important. But I want to give you the
Absolutely.
floor before we go. I want to give you the last
Oh,
couple of
one
minutes
other
for
thing I
anybody you
wanted to
want to give a
add to
shout
that
out
point,
to,
Jay.
or final thoughts. Shoot, shoot.
Yeah, yeah. One other point that I wanted to add to that, that I really hope that this can resonate in people's hearts. But family is beyond blood. You have your blood family and you have your faith family. And to
Come on
that
now.
story that Jaylon just expressed, that gave his testimony, that was me caring for him because he's my brother at the end of the day. I know we're not blood brothers, but we're faith brothers, and to me, that is much more significant than blood for me personally, because exposure leads to expansion. And if you're able to expose yourself to others, you'll be able to elevate other people. I'm all about elevation. I'm always trying to make anything in my surroundings better, um, just beyond me, man. And so it just really makes a difference as far as how you approach people and how you relate to people, because relationship is one of the key components to how you navigate this thing through life, because you never know of the energy that you will bring to someone will bring that back to you. You know, I often learn that the energy you give out is the energy you get back. So
That's
I
right.
want to think about and often make sure that my intentions is to often give out positive energy. And if I get that positive energy to those, no matter who you are, no matter if you're male, female, um, different ethnic groups, whomever, man, we're all people of God. And relationships will really take you a long way, because you never know of how you treat a person or how that will manifest, come back to you down the road. It could either make a certain way in your life, or it will break a certain way in your life. And relationships is a really key integer and element on how your life will blossom and how your life will navigate through this world.
And I'm gonna tell you something. If we take a moment to be a blessing to somebody, to be an intercessor, and expose whatever notions we may have in our life on why this person or this race or this gender isn't somebody I should be wasting my time to, we'll be able to draw a lot closer and be better as people. There are some barriers even within churches that cause some of us not to reach across the aisle to somebody else. And that's just something that's hindering what God wants us to be unified. He wants us to be a part of the kingdom, loving each other. So I encourage you today to take a moment, reach across the aisle, talk to your neighbor, pick up the phone, and maybe it's your BM, maybe it's your BD, maybe it's a relative you haven't talked to in a while, and try to take a moment and bridge the gap. Try to take a moment and rebuild that bridge. And if it doesn't work out, then so be it, and go on with your life. But I think it's important that if we're going to be the light of God, that we find ways to be subtle, um, gentle, and effective in building other people's lives. Um, Bro, I love you, man. I'm glad to have you here. Shout out to your family. And I want you to keep going forward. You know where I am. We're going to keep building. Um, you know, I don't want to talk about LeBron this year. I don't want any phone calls about him surpassing Kareem. He's still
You don't
not
have to
better than
worry about
Jordan.
that, man.
He's
We have
still
some
not
other
better than
serious
Jordan.
stuff to focus on.
He's still not better than Jordan. I just want to put that out there. No,
That's
I'm
all good.
teasing you, bro. I'm teasing you, bro. I love you. I'm proud of you, man. And we're gonna keep building. We're gonna keep reaching more people for the kingdom. Um, and we're gonna have to do this again, bro.
Oh, I would love to, man. There's a lot more topics that I think that it'd be good for
Yeah,
us to talk about and let and have it be disseminated for public consumption, man. So I definitely would love to do this again. I thank you for the opportunity.
it's a pleasure to have you. I appreciate your patience. We're gonna call this phase one. We'll be back in, we'll say, another quarter. We'll pick up here. God bless you guys. Thank you for coming. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Jesus Talk podcast. 365 on YouTube, Facebook, as well as Instagram. We have plenty more content on here as Bible studies, as well as other testimonials, very powerful people. We're just here to promote the kingdom of God and be a blessing to encourage your life. We have prayer on here as well and other things. Check it out. You'll be blessed. God bless you. We'll see you next time. Peace.